to begin with what is the Defense Threat Reduction Agency Chemical and Biological Technologies Department's first university engagement webinar for 2020 entitled Doing Business with DTRA. My name is Carl Brown. For those folks who are interested in titles, I am the Staff Director for Strategic Communication and Outreach at the Defense Threat Reduction Agency in the Research and Development Directorate and the Chemical and Biological Technologies Department. So the material that we're going to talk about today is specific to the Chemical and Biological Technologies Department, although there may in some instances be applicability to other parts of the agency. Quick 2-minute intro for me. I have been a DTRA employee for almost 20 years. All of that has been in the Chemical and Biological Technologies Department. A portion of it has been through service in the United States Navy, and then after retiring from the Navy, continuing to serve as a civil servant. And it has been my distinct honor and pleasure to serve in this capacity. I wasn't always directing strategic communication and outreach. For 8 years in the Chem Biotechnologies Department, I managed programs as a defense acquisition professional. And so my hope is some of the work I did managing programs and the work I am doing in the strategic communications group will translate into useful information for those who are participating today. So on behalf of the Director of the Chemical and Biological Technologies Department, Dr. Ron Han, I want to thank everyone for joining us today and look forward to these presentations and any questions and answers that may come as we go through today's webinar. Next slide, please. So this is basically what the webinar is going to look like. Full disclosure, we generally use this same format. So if you have participated in university engagement webinars in the past, this should look like something you are familiar with. If this is your first time joining us on one of our webinars, this kind of model is fairly typical of what we follow. I'm going to walk you through who we are and what we do. Then I'm going to hand off to one of my colleagues, Mr. Ricky McLaughlin, who is the Division Chief for Chemical and Biological Technologies Department Contracts Division. And then he will be followed by Mr. Mark DeGroot, who's a Technical Program Manager for Research and Development, Chemical and Biological Technologies Department Acquisition Programs. And then we'll close out our presentation session with a Q&A chat session. And if you don't mind, I would ask that you please hold your questions until we get to the Q&A, at which time we'll try to address as many, if not all, of the questions as we can. So let's get started. Next slide. So it's no secret that there are plenty of bad actors in the world, both state and non-state actors that are working to gain access to weapons of mass destruction. These actors usually use any and all means necessary to achieve their objectives. This includes the use of WMD and other improvised threats. To put it simply, here at DTRA, we prepare the U.S. and our allies for the unthinkable. Our broader mission at the Defense Threat Reduction Agency is to enable WMD and improvised threat communities of action to counter and deter threat networks. The Chem Biotechnologies Group works with the rest of the U.S. government, allies, and partner countries and international organizations to counter weapons of mass destruction and improvised threats. Next slide, please. Within the Chemical and Biological Technologies Department, or DTRA-CV, as you may hear us referred to regularly, our mission is to lead the Department of Defense S&T, or Science and Technology Research, to anticipate, defend, and safeguard against chemical and biological threats to the warfighter. We accomplish this by focusing all of our efforts in 3 strategic priorities: integrated early warning, preparing for surprise, and integrated layered defense. We accomplish our mission by sponsoring good science and turning ideas into prototypes and capabilities for the warfighter. We work to fill the breadth of chemical and biological defense, from suits and boots, masks and gloves, to filters, diagnostics, detection systems, and medical countermeasures. Next slide. Solutions require partnerships, and as a result, our primary function is to synchronize DoD science, military, and national laboratories, industry, and academia. It's a monumental task and a heavy burden to bear, but we do it. We do it in the form of partnerships with other organizations across our government, industry, academia, and national laboratories. We also work with many others across the globe and with governments worldwide, along with the private sector, which leads us right to why we are here today. We want to work with you. If you're on this webinar, we hope that we will find a way to broaden our idea pool and translate new ideas into prototypes and solutions and capabilities for our warfighters. We want to help you turn your ideas into capabilities. That's our function. And now that we've kind of gone through the general overview, we're going to take a more focused look, and I'll turn over the presentation to my colleague, Ricky McLaughlin. Rick?
Well, in this pandemic environment, I'm going to cover today doing business with DTRA. The agenda I will cover is basically it's going to be 3 areas: key steps doing business, important terms to understand, a solicitation, and broad agency announcement. The first step is for you to know your business strategy. Know what your sweet spot is, know where you want to go, know what areas in the government you want to try to get into their particular business areas. Step 2. Here's some of the, you have to understand the procurement, federal procurement. What you mostly have to deal with when you deal with federal procurement is the FAR and the DFAR. Step 3. Registration. To do business with the government, you have to register with login.gov, and you have the link there, and also with SAM. You'll hear this SAM acronym again, Systems of Award Management, because that is our new areas. Replace what was known previously as FedBizOps. Step 4. Identify your industry focus. Now, the government puts out particular jobs or particular contracts based on the NAICS code. And as we talked about in step 1, know what your business strategy is. Knowing your business strategy and the NAICS codes go hand in hand on what you can do for the government or business you can acquire. Identify prime and subcontracting opportunities. This can be for both prime contractors and subcontractors. As a prime contractor, you may want to look for certain small businesses to team with, and also as a small business, you may be looking for large business to team with. And we can find those on sam.gov, and also for small business, they show the Small Business Network, and we have the procurements, the federal data procurement system. There's other areas, and you can see links there where you can get involved with the government businesses. Seek additional assistance. We have, for this especially for small business, you have the SBA resources, and you have the PTAC, which is Procurement Technical Assistance Centers. They provide additional assistance to small businesses, people who are trying to get involved with government contracting. And business development. It is important for you as a business to do business development. It's kind of like setting up your resume. You have your capability statements. You need to focus it, whatever your business has expert in, focus it on what the particular agency mission is, and continue to look at the SAM.gov, because they have market research inquiries and they have their draft solicitations we put out there, and that can give you the opportunity to know what the government is looking for and see if your expertise can fit that particular requirement that the government is looking for. And here are some important terms. You know, you've heard of contracts, and that's basically a contract that is for supplies and services. You have grants. We basically send out grants where we have very little government oversight, but basically grants are sent out for support or to help. You have interagency agreements, interagency acquisitions, which basically are Economy Act acquisitions, where you can have one agency has a contract with a particular contractor, and another agency can get services from that contractor through the Economy Act. And you have other transaction agreement, which are transactions other than contracts, grants, and corporate agreement. And Mark DeGroot, who will brief after me, will cover those more in depth. Solicitations versus BAAs. Just want to cover a couple of areas of those. You look at the type of work. A solicitation, it's not limited to R&D, but BAAs are. Solicitations are defined, and BAAs are more flexible. Solicitations have evaluation criteria. BAAs are more scientific. And the end result is a solicitation will give you a contract, but a BAA can give you a grant, a contract, or an OTA. So far, I've covered these particular areas, but I will transfer over to Mark DeGroot, and he's going to talk about the OTAs. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. In the following slides, I will describe what an OTA is, its history, and its usage at DTRA, including the use of a consortium. OTA started in 1958 with NASA. The U.S. was behind the USSR in the space race and needed a new approach that was innovative, more collaborative, and faster than traditional contracts. In 1994, the Department of Defense started using OTAs. Other transaction authority is the term commonly used to refer to United States Code 2371. That's the authority of the Department of Defense to carry out certain prototype, research, and production projects. OT authorities were created to give Department of Defense the flexibility necessary to adopt and incorporate business practices that reflect commercial industry standards and best practices into its award instruments. As of the 2016 National Defense Authorization Act, Section 845, the Department of Defense currently has permanent authority to award OT under 10 U.S.C. 2371 for research, prototype, and production purposes. At DTRA, we use 10 U.S.C. 2371B, which is prototype authority. That is a statutory authority that states OTs shall be used to carry out prototype projects that are directly relevant to enhancing the mission effectiveness of military personnel and the supporting platforms, systems, components, or materials proposed to be acquired or developed by the Department of Defense, or to improvement of platform systems, components, or materials in use by the armed forces. OTs are not covered by the federal acquisition regulations and are highly flexible business tool use of which requires application of astute business acumen to ensure smarter, more efficient acquisition of prototype systems for the Department of Defense. OTs require a minimum of at least one non-traditional defense contractor participating to a significant extent in the project, or a cost-sharing arrangement requiring that at least 1/3 of the cost of the OTA come from non-federal sources. Non-traditional defense contractor is defined by statute as an entity that is not currently performing and is not performed for at least 1 year period preceding the solicitation sources by the Department of Defense for the procurement or transaction, any contract or subcontractor for the Department of Defense that is subject to the full coverage under the cost accounting standards prescribed in Title 41, Section 1502. With regard to Section 845 authority, a prototype can generally be described as a physical or virtual model used to evaluate the technical or manufacturing feasibility or military utility of a particular technology or process, concept, end item, or system. The quantity developed should be limited to that needed to provide technical or manufacturing feasibility or evaluate military utility. Section 845 neither defines significant nor prescribes a monetary threshold or value to justify significance. Examples of significant participation is supplying a key technology, facility, or unique capability, causing a material and quantifiable reduction in the project cost or schedule, causing a measurable increase in the performance of the prototype, and lastly, value-added analysis not based on percentage of project work or value. OTA acquisition tool is authorized by Congress. Approach used to reach out to business that hasn't worked with the government in the past. The OTA agreement is tailorable, including flexibility and intellectual property provisions. OTAs promote public-private cooperation, cooperative agreements. Payments are based on milestone achievements. Since April 2018, ChemBio has had 34 OTA consortium projects. ChemBio has a quarterly call for these topics. So at ChemBio, we use the following 4 consortiums. There are about 40 different OTAs, but we use these 4. We use the Consortium for Command Control and Communications in Cyberspace, the Defense Innovation Unit, the Countering Weapons of Mass Destruction, and the Medical CBRN Defense Consortium. So for industry, how to get started, I covered that it's open to small business, non-traditional defense contractors, academia, traditional defense contractors, and nonprofit research institutions. It's non-traditional industry focus. OTAs do not follow the FAR. And solicitations is via multiple sources. The SAM website that Rick mentioned, CSO, and consortium websites. Usually there's a low barrier to entry, $500 or less. For the government, we identify the OTA vehicle we want to use. We have open communication with the OTA team. And the difference between a contract and an OTA is the collaboration. At nearly every step of the process, we can reach out and talk to the company, except when we are actually evaluating the proposal. Other than that, we can talk with the company. We can develop a statement of objectives, requirements document, and then conduct market research and post-solicitation. And this slide is simply how to contact the consortiums. So with an OTA, like I mentioned, there's over 40 different OTAs. But if you're interested in working with us at the Chemical and Biological Technology Department, these are the 4 we use. Now I'm going to turn over back to Carl to start the Q&A chat session.
what you all have gotten from Ricky and Mark is kind of drinking from a fire hose 101. However, it is kind of the most useful nugget or nuggets that one might need to kind of get a macro level understanding of what types of information is useful when the decision is made to pursue federal acquisition. Both Ricky and Mark spoke to more traditional FAR-based approaches as well as some non-traditional approaches to defense acquisition, particularly our most recent use of other transaction authority. Hopefully that information will spur some conversation or inform useful questions, and when we start answering your questions, we will hopefully get closer to information that is useful to each of you or your organizations individually. With that, we will jump into Q&A with the first question from David Marciano. Are slides available? That one's easy. The answer is yes. I'll leave it to Carla in our wrap-up to kind of talk about how and when that will be available, but the slides will be available. And our next question, Monique Van Hook. I hope I didn't mispronounce your name. Maybe I should stop fooling with names. Can you discuss specifically for ChemBio if fundamental research should be submitted to CB or to fundamental research J9, for example, characterization of a biothreat agent that is not directly to a medical countermeasure? So it's a fair question. Let me see if I get some thoughts from Ricky and Mark, and then I will share my thoughts as needed. Gentlemen, what do you think?
I'll let Mark, if you don't mind, I'll let you take that one because you're expert on the BAAs a lot, but and I can add something on if you don't mind, Mark.
Sure. This is Mark DeGroot. So ChemBio has an annual ChemBio solicitation. Within research and development, there are two other BAAs that are always open, the Innovation BAA and the Fundamental Research BAA. Now, a subset of Fundamental Research BAA is the Basic Research BAA, and that has defined times. However, I suggest, if you're interested, go to the SAM.gov website, and you can look at all the BAAs. Nuclear Technologies also has a BAA, but I don't know if it's open at this point. So back to you, Carl.
Okay. Ricky, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I'm good. That sounds very good. Thank you.
All right. So one other thing that I try to remember webinar attendees, I try to get folks to think about, not remember, is that there isn't necessarily a right or wrong answer about where work should be submitted. Conversely, what really ought to drive behavior is identifying in the solicitation or broad agency announcement what the government is looking for, and that's where that information is explicitly stated. One of the challenges that sometimes creeps into the disconnect between industry and academia and the government is folks have something that they're good at, and they say, we could make this better if we got some federal funding. And then they start shopping around looking for places where they could get the money. The way the government manages acquisition is we say, this is the thing we're looking for. And then we invite people to submit proposals or white papers to give us their approach to a solution. We select those submissions based on technical merit, cost, schedule, performance. For sure, but the key is what the government is looking for. And so when you're reading a solicitation, Monique, you should submit your work to the solicitation that is most relevant to what you are trying to accomplish, as it is consistent with what the government is trying to do. And if that makes sense to you, just jump back in, Monique, and say, thank you for answering, or I was asking a different question. All right? Next, working with the government usually takes a very long time. How difficult is it to work with DTRA? So DTRA is a part of the government. I spend a bulk of my time engaging with industry, academia, and other government partners. And one of the first things that I tell everyone that I work with, got to be patient. If you think that something you are doing in the government is going to happen quickly, probably not going to happen. One of the things that's important to understand, though, is things don't take a long time because we're indifferent to how long it takes. Things don't take a long time because people aren't working. Things take a long time because our biggest responsibility, and I'm going to ask Ricky to chime in on this, our biggest responsibility is to ensure fundamental fairness. And ensuring fundamental fairness takes time to make sure that all the people who are applying for federal funds are given a fair opportunity to earn those funds. Ricky, you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, that's very true. One of the tenets as a contracting officer, I'm considered a business advisor, and I'm considered also a tax steward. We have to be fair. We have the SECA rule, Competition and Contracting Act from 1984, that basically we're bound by those rules and regulations, so we have to be fair. So, yeah, and plus, all the different additional rules and regulations and statutes and U.S. codes we have to follow. But like Carl was saying, it comes down to fairness. In the corporate world, you don't always have to be fair. You don't always have to compete things. But when it comes to the U.S. government, where we are spending taxpayers' money, we have to really, really be cautious about that. So, yeah, I agree totally with what Carl is saying.
Right. And so to bring Mark into this conversation, one of the things that Mark talked about was these other transactional authorities. OTAs kind of get summarized as non-FAR-based acquisition tools, which is correct. One of the reasons it's a little faster is because some of the applications of fairness are applied through establishing a consortium. Once people are in the consortium, we're working with a smaller pool that allows us to consider the fairness of work application to a smaller pool, and that's where we get the speed from. We aren't foregoing fairness in the OTA process. We're just applying it in a different way. So we're still working on making sure that things are fundamentally fair in the OTA process. However, because we're working with an established pool, things can happen in a shorter time frame. Mark, you want to jump on that?
Carl, I think you covered it extremely well. And that's why in my slides I spoke about, like I said, the 4 consortiums that we at the Combile Defense Program utilize. And however, there's, like I said, there's over 40 different OTAs. And when you become a member of that, then you'll actually see our topics, and not just DTRA, but you'll see throughout the government that use OTAs. For instance, DARPA uses OTAs, NIH uses OTAs. I mean, lots of different organizations within the federal government use the OTA vehicle. Go back to you, Carl.
Thank you, Mark. Yep. So the next question, is there a contact list of program officers? So there isn't a promulgated or official agency list of program and project officers. That question came from Shannon. So Shannon, if there's a different question or you want to ask it a different way, maybe I'm not getting at what you're looking for. The other thing that I will share with you is another item I talked to large groups about when we talk about working with the government is this notion that if I know somebody, that will help me get my work in the system. It won't. That's actually a myth that we should bust, right? So interpersonal relationships are what they are, and I don't want to say that if you know someone, it's absolutely never going to have a play in how things get done. That's unrealistic. However, what I can tell you is if you know someone, you just know them. What happens with acquisition is a person has to submit a proposal. That proposal has to be reviewed. It has to be reviewed objectively, and the results of that review is what acquisition selections are based on, not who people know, but the merits of their proposal. And so I don't want to kind of dissuade you from trying to make contact with people. I'll do what I can to help with that. We don't have a list, but also I think there's this expectation that if I can make contact with individuals, that will help. It shouldn't. All right? Marcos asks, is it possible to have a list of funded projects so we can know how our work may fit in? So there's a couple of ways to do that. I'm going to invite the gentleman to join in, but one of the things I'll tell you is all awarded contracts are listed on sam.gov. You can get to those maybe a little bit faster through some of the links on the DTRA website. If you go to www.ditra.mil, then there's a tab, I think it's called Opportunities. It's a drop down, and then you can select contracts, and you'll end up 5 or 6 clicks in at a place that shows contracts that have been awarded. Ricky, Mark, you guys want to weigh in on that?
This is Rick. You're spot on with that answer. The contracts, anything that's awarded is out there. The government stresses transparency. So, you can always, when a contract is awarded, you may not have team with the contract initially, but you can always reach out to whoever the prime contractor is and see if you can do something with them. But as solicitations go out on SAM, contractors can get together in team. I've seen in other jobs that large contractors get together and team and different things like that. So we always will have the information out there via the sam.gov. So even after the contract is awarded, you still can try to team with folks.
Okay, so then we have, do you fund computational projects without supporting experimental work for validation? My response to that is it's complicated. And what that means to me is, again, selection of projects is based on the merit of meeting what is asked for in the given solicitation, whether you are replying to a BAA or an RFI or an RFP or something that's being sought through the OTA, right? I mean, these things are based on your ability to articulate your ability to meet what the government seeks. So I hope that answers the question. If not, maybe you can answer it a different way and we can try to get at it from a different perspective. But essentially, what gets funded is the thing that provides best value to the government based on what the government is trying to accomplish. Ricky, Mark?
Spot on there. You're spot on. This is Rick. You're spot on. Yep.
So I've been doing this too long. What I'm going to do is stop answering first.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
So we have an advanced question. One of the questions that we got in advance, what is the best way to be informed about grant opportunities with DTRA? And also, are there specific funding opportunities for early career and non-tenure positions? So I think that's an HR question, but maybe not. Ricky, Mark, you guys want to jump in on the first part of that, best way to be informed about grant opportunities?
Well, excuse me. Go ahead, Mark.
Okay, thanks, Rick. This is Mark. I would suggest looking at grants.gov website for opportunities with DTRA. And back to you, Rick.
Ricky?
That's exactly what I was going to say, so
Sure.
I covered it.
Yeah, so here's the thing that you can add, right? Hopefully the type of thing that is a benefit gained by taking the time to go through the webinar. So on grants.gov and sam.gov, there's an opportunity to set up alerts. So you don't have to go to the site and search through hundreds of thousands of opportunities to find the right one. You can use keywords, you can use industry sectors, but I would encourage you to go to grants.gov, go to sam.gov, make sure that you have an account created, and as you go through the process of working in your own account, create alerts so that when things that fit in your area of expertise are posted, you get notified by the system. All right? Next question. So I don't want to skip this. I think this is an HR question, but if I've answered a question that wasn't being asked, please ask it a different way. Are there specific funding opportunities for early career and non-tenure positions? If you're asking about opportunities to work, then the answer is yes, and there are both fellowship and internship opportunities as well as full-time government positions. Those can be found on USA Jobs. Next question. Is it possible to receive funding for the laboratory? I don't think that's a full question, so I'm not going to try to jump on that one. That one came from X-Virus, and so if you can resubmit that more fully, we can try to answer it. How important is it to discuss project ideas with the DTRA PM before submitting a white paper? So we just kind of went over that, right? Again, it might be helpful if there's someone who can help you with insight or help you understand what might be a complex technical or scientific idea so that you can more accurately tailor your response. However, every solicitation includes a procedure for asking questions. And so the question you might get from a specific program manager ought to be the same as the answer you're going to get if you go through the solicitation question procedure. Moreover, this is why I say it's not supposed to be helpful to know people. You should always be referred to that procedure. Like, people shouldn't pick up their phone and answer questions about a solicitation. That isn't what's supposed to happen. Mark, Ricky, you guys want to jump in?
Yeah,
Carl,
this is
go
Mark.
ahead, Mark.
Okay. Yes. So once, for instance, I'll just talk specifically to the ChemBio BAA. So once the ChemBio BAA goes out, there is a process. There is a set time period established in the BAA for questions and answers. So we will get your questions, and they will be sent back to you on the sam.gov website without your name, but it'll have the actual question with an answer, and we do that for phase 1 and as well as phase 2. And there is in the BAA there is a information on where to send your questions, and I also like to probably highlight at this time that each broad agency announcement is different, and so you need to read them carefully because each one is different. They all have their own criteria. Like I said, the ChemBio BAA is an annual solicitation, whereas other solicitations within our Research and Development Directorate are open at all times, including the Fundamental Research and the Innovation BAA. Back to you, Carl.
All right, thanks, Mark. This is another one of the advanced questions. Is there an open mechanism or space where unsolicited white papers or solution briefs can be submitted? Mark, Ricky?
I'll let Mark take this one again because I know he's the expert on that.
Fair
Okay,
enough.
this is Mark. This is Mark. Yes, there is. The answer is yes, but I want to caveat it. The caveat is if you send something unsolicited to DTRA, it's going to be tasked to whichever department in the building the BAA or the solicitation is for. But in order for it to be successful, it has to be unique. So in my time in ChemBio, I have seen a few, and none have been successful. So what I recommend is take a look at our solicitations. And as Carl stated earlier, take a look at what we have. And another thing to do, being on this webinar today is a great way to talk to people at DTRA. Another thing is our biannual conference, which is exceptional. So there are ways to work with us. Back to you, Carl.
Okay. All right. I think I am at, are there current specific opportunities for COVID-19 open now? So this is a tricky one. Couple of things. It's important to consider areas of responsibility. So COVID-19 is a public health emergency. As such, the lead agency for COVID-19 response or pandemic response is Health and Human Services. Components of Health and Human Services include NIAID, they include the CDC. Those are the groups who are the leads for COVID-19 response. Now, there is a robust research and development element within the Department of Defense, and that element is working on things that may be related to or directly impact COVID-19 pandemic response. The extent to which you might find a solicitation that says, for example, develop monoclonal antibodies that target SARS-CoV-2 antibodies, I don't know, there might be. But the place you're going to find that is sam.gov. And so keep in mind that whether DTRA is working on it or the Naval Research Lab or one of the Army Research Laboratories, if someone is working on it and soliciting academic or industry support, the place to find that is sam.gov. Mark, Ricky, one of you guys want to amplify that?
I can't add it.
Rick.
This is Rick. I can't add anything else on that. You got anything, Mark?
No, I was just going to say, Carl, you nailed it. That's exactly what should be done.
This is always my favorite. So I'm going to let Mark answer it because Mark and I go through this at staff meetings all the time. Will DTRA be considering subject to availability fund proposals from previous submissions? Mark, will they?
Okay. So I'll speak directly to the ChemBio annual solicitation. So the ChemBio solicitation is an annual solicitation. Once the director signs the solicitation, subject availability of funds is good for 1 year from the date of his signature. In the past, we used to have solicitations that were open for a longer period of time. The problem that we encounter with those is that as time goes by, the cost proposals are out of date and would have to be regenerated. So, and for the other BAAs, you have to actually, read the BAA for the language pertaining to that specific BAA. But I will say that there is a timeline, a time limit for SAF projects. And but like I said, I can speak directly to the ChemBio one. But you'd have to actually look at the Innovation BA and the Fundamental Research BA. Back to you, Carl.
Yep. Also, I think it's important to consider that this question addresses a future event, and it's just not reasonable to expect that we could say today that something might be considered 3 months from now. There's just no way to know. And so just keep that in mind. Next question, does DTRA fund SBIRs, Small Business Innovation Research Projects? Yes. I'm not sure how to amplify on that. Specifically for the Chemical and Biological Technologies Department, there is a ChemBio Defense program, which DTRA CB is a part of, SBIR program, separate and apart from the DTRA DoD SBIR program. And so there are two avenues through which one could get DTRA funding for small business innovation and research projects, and those should be managed through the SBIR site and or through SBIR solicitations. Anything else, Mark? Did I mess that up?
No, you did great, Carl. And I'd just say the SBIR project, the umbrella is a Small Business Administration, and there's a whole website devoted to SBIRs.
There you
So
go.
if you're interested in SBIR, go to their website. Check it out.
Okay. Another advanced question. Can you tell us about teaming tools or databases DTRA has or recommends for finding complementary partners around DTRA RFIs and solicitations? Mark, Ricky, you guys want to jump on that one first?
Rick, you want to give it a shot?
I'm looking at the question. Where's the question again?
So from the bottom, it's about 3 up from the bottom, Rick. It was webinar host 1, advanced question.
Uh-huh.
Tell us about teaming tools or databases.
Well, that's what I basically, when I was talking about teaming tools and databases, that's what I had talked about, and I'm flipping back through my slides on, where is it? Basically, step 3, registering, and step 5 and step 6. Basically, step 5 talks about identify prime contract and subcontracting opportunities, and those are the links on there. And step 6 is seeking assistance in the marketplace. Those are the teaming tools and databases we have, and what not that we have that's all available because they're not all managed by us. That you can go out and find people that are interested to team with you. But like I was saying, when you go to sam.gov and you see a requirement that's out there, I come from the systems world, building large items. So just say we got to solicit, not us particularly DTRA, but back in the day we would put out a solicitation like for satellite. And satellite's going to be big dollar acquisitions. But you see what type satellite is. If you have any experience, you as a small business or whatever, you could say, hey, you contact some of the big guys out there, the Boeings, the Lockheed Martin, and let them know what area you have an expertise in, and they may bring you on as a sub. So it's all about collaboration and coordination. And steps 4, 5, and I believe it was 4 and 5 definitely, and 5 and 6, 5 and 6 definitely can get you in the mix on what's going on and who's doing what. A lot of times large businesses will go out and look for folks who have little unique talents that they could use. So that's all I have on that.
Okay. I would add that, there's also the industrial groups like NDIA, the National Defense Industrial Association. There's also a Biotechnology Innovation Organization, or BIO. These are 2 very, very large groups that are nothing more than consortia of industry representatives who can kind of provide opportunities and venues for meeting and understanding what's happening in different sectors in the industrial base. So those might be useful for some folks. We aren't getting a bunch of questions from attendees, and so I'll go to the next advanced question, and then we might be in a situation where we're wrapping up. Can you recommend trainings related to awards involving controlled, unclassified information? Ooh, so that's a hard one for non-governmental folks as far as I'm concerned. Ricky, Mark, I'll see what one of you guys thinks.
Okay, you talking about the last questions?
So the one, so training related to awards involving controlled, unclassified information, which is the one we're at. Second from the bottom.
Okay. I actually don't know of any. Wow. I know GSA has a lot of training, but I can't give you anything more than that. That's all I can give on that. Mark, you got anything?
No, I don't. No, that's outside my area of expertise.
Yeah, so that one's hard. I mean, it's really, you just have to find sort of who's in the business of offering this kind of acquisition-specific non-governmental training, I think is what you have to do. So that one's a hard one for us to answer from inside the government. And then another advanced question, would it be possible to have a visit from program offices to a university? So the answer to that question is easy. Specifically for the Chem Biotechnologies Department, that's the business that I manage. The answer to the question is yes, it is possible. I don't know if my contact information is available somewhere in this broad breadth of information, but I'm happy to coordinate with folks on potential visits, whether those might be virtual or on-site visits. But this webinar is a part of a more comprehensive university engagement program that includes online things like this webinar and on-site visits from myself, other folks on our team, as well as other parts of senior leadership in the department and the agency. Next question. Can program officers host Zoom meetings with researchers of our biomedical center? Maybe not a Zoom meeting, but certainly digital meetings are occurring. I mean, we host quite a few interactive meetings on this platform, this Adobe Connect platform, which is generally the tool that we use. We have had some success with Zoom, although there are some questions about security with Zoom and the extent to which we can be completely open about programmatic discussions on that platform. We have other platforms that are available to us as well, defense conferencing online and things like that. But hosting digital meetings is possible, yes. Okay, so what I'm going to do is do a bit of auctioneering. It looks like we have come to the end of question submissions, so I am going to make a call for last questions. Going once. Going twice. Someone was fervently typing, so I am going to wait for it. Aha, that was a thank you. We will take it. 3 times sold. So we're going to go into wrap up here. We have about 4 or 5 minutes left, and so we have successfully adhered to our intended timeline. Again, I realize that to some extent you're drinking from a fire hose. A part of what we hope will happen is that we don't want to try to get folks on the line for too long. An hour seems to be a good length of time, but also the information is intended to elicit the dialogue that we got, and try to encourage folks to ask questions that are useful to them in their organization, as opposed to us trying to figure out what you need to know and then giving you that, because there's no way for us to do it. So hopefully we gave you some information that you can use, and then the Q&A helped kind of amplify any information that you received from the slide presentations. We're going to send you a survey, and for both future activities and for some of your colleagues, and I'd ask that you please respond to the survey. It helps us make the webinars better. It will help us strengthen our on-site visits. So if we end up in front of your organization, we'll be better prepared to meet the needs of your institution if you can help us with your feedback. So I am foot stomping, but you can't see it. Please take a few minutes to respond to the survey. It shouldn't take more than 10 minutes to do, but it does help us provide better and more useful information in the future. The other thing I will tell you is that even if you've been to one webinar, what I'll tell you is you've been to one webinar, and the next time we do it, there may be different questions or different information that is useful to you. So I would encourage you to keep coming back, even if what you discover is you're logging out. This is the place where we have an opportunity to share information, and we hope that we're getting it to you in a way that's useful. Please respond to the survey, and with that, we're going to consider this webinar closed.